Yeah, this is Phil Block. I can't hear anything from you guys just yet. I don't know if the room's broadcasting or not, but I'm not hearing any broadcast.
For the special education experience, and she will also be a director of special education, supporting school teams. Sally Sue's going to lead the pledge. Kristen's going to lead the land acknowledgement, and then they'll say a few words to the board.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey.
We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples, who include the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, and Snoqualmie peoples. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. We reflect on the historic context that brings us to reside on this land and accept responsibility to interrupt erasure. We commit to an ongoing partnership with the Snoqualmie tribe as we listen to, learn from, and lead with their guidance. And I'm really excited to be a part of the Bellevue School District and looking forward to seeing the work that we get done here. It's amazing. Thanks.
Well, as a special education leader. Oh, sorry. So my name is Sally Sue McDonald. I've lived in Bellevue since I was 5. So I've seen the changes in the Bellevue School District, raised my kids here. So being part of the special education community, my brother has Down syndrome. So it is my commitment and my passion, and I'm thrilled to be a special education leader. So thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Okay, next we have the acknowledgements. Oh, not too much in August. Okay, on the 9th of August, we have the International Day of the World's Indigenous People. And on the 12th of August, we have International Youth Day. Okay. Now, I'm going to move that we approve the agenda as written here, and I'll ask for a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. And we're still trying to get connectivity to Phil. It is working. Okay, good. I didn't hear. Okay. All right. Okay, so the next thing is to go on to the review of the consent agenda. So let me just ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye. Aye.
Hi.
Oh, thank you. Good. All right. So now we're ready for the superintendent update.
Oh, great. Okay. First slide. It's great to be in August. We're excited. We're just about a month from the start of school. I'm just going to give a couple of updates, but then the main part of my update is to introduce some of our new administrators to Bellevue, which I'm excited about. So go ahead and go to the next slide. I just want to make a mention about summer school. So we have had an incredible summer school program. Ended yesterday. I had an opportunity to visit the program at Sherwood Forest, but then yesterday, the new administrators and myself, we were able to go to the summer school program at Sammamish High School. And I just want to show you some of the statistics. We've got these three guys who did a presentation there. That's the picture. 648 courses were completed, which is a 130% increase from last year. 387 students at the high school level participated, 23 completing 3 courses, and one of them completed 6 courses during summer school, which is really incredible. We had 50 UW teaching candidates who were volunteering and supporting students, providing individualized support for the kids, and learning how to teach and get into the profession as well. And then we had an opportunity to visit a chemistry course that Jessica Yeomans was teaching. She's an incredible teacher, and one of the things that they're trying to do in summer school is to innovate around project-based learning. And so in partnership with Angie DiLoretto, who is one of our curriculum developers, they created a project-based learning chemistry course for summer school where the kids got to take on an environmental sustainability challenge. And so they're studying the acidification of the ocean and what's happening to the oysters, and then how you can use chemistry to address the issue. And so it's everything that we're hoping to accomplish in Bellevue, being innovative, tackling things to improve the environment, and then making learning fun. I mean, because the kids looked somewhat happy to be at summer school, but for sure, I think being able to take on big projects like that was more interesting than just going through the course to get credits. And so just a kudos to the entire summer school team, all the teachers, counselors, and everybody who participated and served our students. And then kudos to Angie and to Jessica for this partnership to bring just a focus on student engagement to our kids. Next slide. Okay. We're excited about Leadership Institute. I was talking with Eva Collins, our deputy superintendent, yesterday. We're, I think, in our 28th year of hosting a Leadership Institute in Bellevue. And so 1996 is when Leadership Institute started, first for just principals, and then it expanded to include all administrators and then teacher leaders. But 28 years and going strong. And we are very excited about Leadership Institute, which is starting this Monday, which is kind of the beginning of the new school year for us who work in the school district. We are going to be launching our new strategic plan. And on day one, I can't not think of a better place to do it than to launch it at the Intellectual House at the University of Washington, which is kind of the Longhouse at UW. I'm excited to, a big part of our strategic plan is around belonging. A big part of our strategic plan is around environmental sustainability. And I can't think of a better place to anchor those two concepts than in a Native American Longhouse, where, I mean, they have an incredible understanding of belonging and community and an appreciation and love for the earth. And so it's going to be a great way to kind of anchor our strategic plan. And then on day 2, we'll be back at Odell Middle School, where we'll be digging deeper into elevating student voice and agency as we develop our school improvement plans. And then on day 3, district leaders are going to be working on human-centered systems and relationships while school leaders continue to their work on school improvement planning. So we're excited. Next week, we're all back, and we'll be planning for a great school year for our kids. Next slide. Kind of laggy, but so I'm gonna have Janisha Wee come up. Janisha is she's been an assistant principal in Bellevue at the secondary level and at the elementary level. And what did you say? Yeah, right up here. That'd be great. Yes, please. And we are so excited because this year we were able to bring back a director of human resources, and Janisha kind of projected her vision for what she thought we could be doing in human resources to elevate and support our staff. And it was like, if she could deliver on even a fraction of what she had talked to us about, we would be in such an incredible place. And so, Janisha, we'd love for you just to say hi to the board, but then have you introduce all of our new administrators.
Oh, There we go. Thank you, John. I'm Janisha Wee, and my former name was Wee, and now it's Branch. But thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'm really excited to be in my new role as Director of Employee Relations and Leadership Development. We just wrapped up day 2 of new admin orientation, and it was just amazing. Yesterday we focused on grounding ourselves in relationships and connection as a new cohort. And today we focus more of the technical aspect, but thinking about the priorities of the strategic plan and the community commitments of the strategic plan. So I believe it was a very successful day. So I want to go ahead and get started. I know that John introduced 2 of our new admin already. And do we want them to come up and, okay. So first we're going to go ahead and have Ariana come up, Gioroli. And Ariana is going to be the assistant principal, excuse me, at Highland Middle School. Thank you. Let's see, and we had a couple of administrators that had to step away. See, Emma Shirk, Emma is here. Oh, Emma didn't make it, okay. Let's see. Let's see, James. James, would you mind coming up? I know some. And then I'm just going to go ahead and Stephanie Chen. James, is your last name Blanton? Blanton, thank you. And so James is the assistant principal at Newport High School, and Stephanie Chen is the assistant principal at Tilica Middle School. Thank you. Oh, and then Susie. And I'm still learning everyone's last name. So Susie's last name is Chancellor? Shalanson, thank you. And Susie is the assistant principal at Chinook Middle School. I also want to acknowledge the other administrators that are not with us right now, but Miguel Gutierrez is the principal at Lake Hills. Matthew Costeca is the principal at Enetai. Jay Powell is the assistant principal at Enetai. Emma Shirk is our new director of multi-language learning. Dr. William Jackson is our new director of teaching and learning. Amrinder Baines is the assistant principal of, oh my goodness, Interlake. And I'm trying to make sure I get, Chris Hagan is new principal of Newport Heights. And Laura Lyons is the interim principal at Medina. I think I pretty much got everyone. There's a large group of us this year. I believe there's 13 total. So I apologize if I overlooked anyone. But do you want to give time for everyone to have a few words or?
Should we do a picture?
Yeah,
Okay,
we usually do something like that.
Let's
Get
just
up
take a
and-
quick photo with them.
Yeah.
sounds good.
You guys want to come up here and then we'll
Oh,
just surround you.
okay, where are we going?
Just right here like normal.
Okay.
And then the last person I want to acknowledge is Kalina's. What's her last name? Kalila Rasan, thank you. She is the assistant principal at Sherwood Forest. So, thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
Okay, my last comment is I got to spend like 4 hours with our new administrators yesterday. It was incredible. There's a picture of us in front of the bus. We did a bus tour of Bellevue. So we started at Jingmei, and then we drove all the way down to Somerset. I explained to them some of the history of Bellevue and how the trestle bridge used to be over water until they lowered Lake Washington. And then we drove up to Enetai, learned a little bit about the history of Enetai. We did a walk and talk around downtown park, and I explained to them how we used to own that property and kind of wish we still did. And then drove through the Spring District. We just drove around Interlake High School, Sherwood Forest, Highland, showed them Crossroads. We didn't show them the bread factory, but we did drive by there. And then we ended up at Sammamish, where we got to see students just proud of the projects that they had finished over the course of summer school. And so we spent a lot of time together, and I will tell you, they are the kindest group of people, super collaborative, and we're excited about them leading in our district. So yeah, that's the end of my superintendent comment.
I never have the microphone on, right? So it's time for public comment. And to start out, there's a lot of information on this slide about the public comment guidelines. So I'm just going to try to summarize briefly that please limit your remarks to no more than 2 minutes. We'll have a timer. And then we have guidelines so that the standard of civility that the board imposes on itself. So we like the commenters to follow that. So let's not have any comments that are libelous or slanderous or an unwarranted invasion of privacy or obscene or indecent or that would violate school district policy or any procedure related to harassment, intimidation, bullying, discrimination. Let's not have comments that incite unlawful acts on school premises or violate lawful school regulations. And let's not create a material and substantial disruption of the orderly operation of this board meeting. Okay, with that in mind, we're ready to hear a public comment.
Just one commenter, I believe, tonight, President Watson. Jessica Fenton is here. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you so much. Dr. Aramaki, Bellevue School District board members, everybody online, and welcome to the new administrators and Bellevue staff, who half of them just left. But my name is Jessica Fenton. I am a parent of 3 children in the Bellevue School District, a high schooler at Newport High School, a middle schooler at Tyee, and an elementary school student at Puesta del Sol. I am a Jewish parent. We are a Jewish family. And we have seen a rise in anti-Semitic incidents in the Bellevue School District. There are Jewish students being harassed for being Jewish. There are Jewish students being told they should go to Israel and die. There are Jewish students being told that Hitler was right and Jews should be gassed. I have had conversations with Dr. Aramaki and John Harrison, who have been very open to listening to what our Jewish families are feeling and experiencing. And as you know, all Jewish students should have a secure, safe place to receive an education. And as a proud member of the Bellevue School District, I promised my kids that I would always stand up in the face of hate for any community, but especially for the Jewish community, since my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. My mother is sitting right there. She didn't know that we were even coming today or that I was going to point her out. She was born in a displaced persons camp in Stuttgart, Germany after the war, where my grandparents met after all of their family was murdered. And to be able to live now and see her grandchildren, she lives with her grandchildren, but have to hear the stories of what we're hearing is happening to students in the district is heartbreaking. I'm here today to say, please make some changes now before the school year starts so that no more Jewish students need to be harassed, teased, bullied, or have to experience anti-Semitic incidents in our Bellevue schools. It is very dehumanizing. Regardless of what you think about what's going on in the Middle East, a Jewish high schooler in Bellevue is not responsible for that and should not be treated differently because of who they are. So I implore you to please make measurable changes. And we are here to work with you as a Jewish community and to be partners in creating a safer space for our Jewish families in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. So now it is time to go on to the approval of the resolution. Resolution 2410, the final acceptance of the Bellevue High School Stadium Storage Building, which the board had a chance to discuss on Monday. But let's hear the presentation of the resolution.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here to get the board to certify the resolution 2024-10 as shown in Exhibit 14A, certifying that the Bellevue High School Storage Building be adopted by the Board of Directors. The architect of record, Sierra Martin, has approved the construction of it and it meets all the qualifications for acceptance by the contractor, Spee West. And a little bit of background on the storage facility. This is the last one that we're doing at the high schools. They all have storage facilities, as do all the middle schools. So we had a standard design that was designed to be able to place at any of the schools and provide storage for athletic equipment. A lot of the stuff that they buy out of their ASB funds is expensive. And so we like to give them a place where they can secure it and keep it in a safe, weather tight environment. So each of these sheds was financed out of our capital levy dollars. No general fund dollars were involved in that. At the middle schools, of the 5 middle schools, we built a similar type structure at Chinook High Middle School, and the others had it included as part of their renovation project. So we now have them at all our secondary schools that have the synthetic turf fields.
Okay, so I will move that we approve Resolution 2024-10. Do we have a second?
Second.
Would anybody like to discuss this resolution a little bit further beyond what we did on Monday? Okay, then in that case, all in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I think that Director Block is also there. And then that means that the resolution is approved.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have our stadium storage building. Now let's go on to board business, which actually, it's only 2 items, but it's huge. So, okay, let's hear about the 2024-25 annual plan.
Great, thank you so much. So we spent most of the time at the last board meeting talking about the annual plan. I'm just going to call out a few things and then turn it back over to you for any continued discussion about it. I guess what I'll say is, last year we celebrated Bellevue High School's 100th anniversary, and so we wanted to launch the next century of learning and excellence in Bellevue in a really powerful and inspiring way. We wanted to come out of the pandemic doing things differently and better. And I feel like this annual plan, which is part of the first year of our new strategic plan, does that. I think it launches us in a very powerful, positive way that just gives ultimate possibilities to our children. In the developing of the strategic plan and through it, our annual plan, we really leveraged empathy interviews, one-on-one interviews with our community to hear people's experiences in Bellevue. And it was a very powerful thing to do. I mean, I think looking at data is one thing, but then hearing the individual stories of our kids, of our families, and of our staff, it makes you think about the things you want to improve in a much different way. We have our annual plan has 20 basically initiatives. Some of those initiatives are things we are excited about and have started and are continuing. Some of them are new based on what the strategic plan team came up with. And some of those initiatives are things that we want to do out of an equity imperative. I will say that, and I'll repeat this to the staff over and over and over again, but we do know that initiative overload is a thing. And so when you think of 20 initiatives, it can create some anxiety in people, but we are committed to kind of being mindful of people's workload. The school board last week talked about the importance of managing the workload of our staff so that people can actually get done the exciting things that we want to get done. And so I will just mention that as a key part of this annual plan. There's in the 3 sections, we belong, we learn, we lead. I just want to call out one each just to remind us and to go a little bit deeper. For we belong, we are planning to create a welcome center. And part of that is we want the experience of families from the minute they engage the first time with the Bellevue School District, whether it's through the website or making a phone call. We want their experience to be one of joy and feeling cared for and welcomed, of great customer service. And that continues from their first connection with the Bellevue School District, to enrolling their children in school, to figuring out how to volunteer, how to set up play dates. We want the entire experience from whenever they start to graduation to be one where they feel welcomed and supported. And so this Welcome Center is going to do that. We're going to elevate the experience for our families in student admissions. We are going to relaunch volunteerism. I've heard lots of families talk about the need to bring volunteers back in our schools. A lot of the companies have tried to figure out how to get into our schools to support. And so we are going to relaunch a system to support volunteerism in our buildings. We're going to elevate parent trainings around mental health, around student anxiety, around academics, college and career. And then we're going to build out parent ambassadors, which is basically growing parent leaders who can be peer support for other parents. And we're excited about getting that started this year, and we think it's going to develop into something that will be a signature for the Bellevue School District. Around learning, next week we have our Leadership Institute, and the whole focus is on creating school improvement plans that's going to elevate student engagement in our classrooms. And so that is kind of the main part of student learning, which is we want our kids to tell us what it's going to take for us to make learning relevant and exciting and supportive of them. And so school improvement plans are going to look different. They're going to be much more focused, and they're going to be based on the voice and agency of our kids. And then I'll just call out one thing about leadership. We lead, and a big part of leading is around environmental sustainability. This school board passed an environmental sustainability policy basically saying we are going to, as an organization, prioritize the protection of our planet. And so environmental sustainability is a signature part of our school improvement plans this coming year, as well as our district improvement plans. And every department in our school district is going to be building out kind of their strategies for how they're going to reduce their carbon footprint. The last thing I'll just mention is this plan is going to get us moving. So these 20 initiatives are going to get us started. We're going to form a strategic plan guiding coalition for this coming year, who's going to help us refine as we go, help us get clear about the initiatives that we really want to push forward, and then to develop actual measures. Last week, I think Director Block talked about like some of these things might lend towards actual like measures that we can do through data and things like that. And so where we can do that, we're going to put those in. We're also going to leverage surveys of our families and students and staff, as well as empathy interviews to see how we're doing. So we're excited about this work. I've read it over and over again, many, many times. And every time I do, I still feel inspired by it. And our hope is that our students, our families, and our staff feel inspired by it as well.
Okay. We didn't want to show the slide of the 20 things? No. Okay.
It is attached, and also after this board meeting, we have it ready to release. And so we have a kind of a narrative.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know staff probably received it because I think Eva sent it out to some of us. So anyway, let's see about having a discussion about this. So I'm going to try not using the die. Okay. We're going to try to go organic here. So who would like to raise their hand first? And also, I was going to say, be mindful to not sort of monopolize, but we know that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aramaki. I don't have a whole lot of additional comments. We've had several iterations of this, and we're able to get our questions answered. But I guess the thing that I just want to make sure that we're keeping in the forefront of all of the work as we roll out these initiatives and implementing some of these activities is making sure that we are being mindful of the EDDM framework and that we're using that throughout the plan. So just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. That's it.
Okay. Oh, Jane? I mean, Director Aras.
Jane's fine, but that's
Yeah.
Aras is good too. Yeah, I would like to piggyback on what was just said regarding EDDM. I know that in the past with the equity policy, the ask was documenting and showing how was it implemented and what is the result and how did you arrive to that, and with use of critical criteria. I'm I'm not quite sure what is the documentation process that you're planning on utilizing, but it would be great for the board to see how EDM was used, especially in some of these specific areas that's listed, like the Welcoming Center, or how are we making sure that we're really addressing the needs of all of our community members, and making sure all the diverse and rich community feels like they're part of it, as well as any other spaces that it's fitting. And the other comment is I want to kind of reflect on what you said last general meeting, which was that some of these initiatives are multiple year long. And I think it'd be really good to make sure as you roll it out, that our staff knows that it's not 1 year goal, so they don't feel stressed about that, and that there's time in achieving that. But otherwise, thank you. I'm excited.
Okay, who's next?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
We've used EDDM a few times, and I just want to make sure that people understand that that's that equity-driven decision-making
Right.
in case people are unclear about what that is. A very robust process for making sure that we are aligned with our values. And I'm in full support of the plan as written. I think I want to piggyback on what Dr. Aras just mentioned. We definitely want to focus on this. Did I say Dr. Aras?
We all
I
get
elevate
promoted
everybody to
occasionally.
PhD status
She
all
stood
the
a little
time.
taller.
Isn't that great? Yeah. Director Aras, thank you. This idea of workload and taking it easy and, not being too overwhelming. And at the same time, I think we have this huge sense of urgency, especially for our kids who have been marginalized for so long, as we've, again, learned and listened so deeply from those empathy interviews. So it's kind of both and, isn't it? I feel that struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go slow to go fast. And at the same time, I want to go really freaking fast because our kids need it. So I'm super conscious and aware of that. And I know you are all working on those measures of success so we can celebrate that progress along the way. Thank you.
Okay, so now it's between me and Director Black. Who wants to go next?
Oh, his hand's up.
Okay, good. I don't see your hand. That's all right. Go next then.
Thanks. Yeah, trying to adapt to this new system remotely is a challenge. So I want to support everything that everybody said so far. I want to emphasize my excitement around the Welcome Center and the opportunity to really support families during some of the critical transitions where there's a lot of uncertainty, entering kindergarten, middle school, and high school, and of course, anyone who's new to the district are kind of those critical transitions where I think that it would be great to have a little more support, and I hope to see the Welcome Center be a big part of that, as well as helping reinvigorate our volunteer programs will be a fantastic thing. I think the point about some of these goals are for this year, and we're going to get them done now, and some of these goals we're going to work on them this year, but we recognize that we're going to have some stretch goals, that some of these items may show up in next year's action plan and the year after that's action plan is something that we recognize. I also want to just mention the commitment to Black excellence in Bellevue. We've seen a lot of statistics that suggest that we're not necessarily meeting the needs of some of our students. The Black students are one of those groups, and we want to focus on one group at a time to make sure that we're serving their needs, but we recognize that there are other groups that we're also not fully meeting their needs. And we hope to be able to get to them in the next action plans and to use lessons we learned from the Black excellence efforts to help support those students as well. And I'm excited to get on with it. We do a lot of planning, and the implementation is where the rubber meets the road, and we're really excited to see some of these measures move forward. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and then just what I wanted to add to this discussion is I just wanted to express my concern for staff stress. And what I mean is when you get a new plan and it shows 20 different initiatives, that could be a bit overwhelming. And so my understanding was that the hope would be that not all 20 are going to fall on any one person except possibly Dr. Aramaki. He gets all 20, but hopefully it'll be split up between different staff members and you won't find like a teacher having to deal with 20 initiatives. So I would just sort of say that if it turns out that somebody literally when they divide this all up gets overwhelmed, I hope that you would contact the board or the superintendent or something so it wouldn't land like that. But basically, I love a lot of things in here, you know. So, all right, so that's, well, do you want another go around for the discussion or are we good? We did talk about this a lot at our retreat and on Monday and other times. So, okay, let's go to the next item of, oh, we have to approve it. Oh, yeah. Okay, all right. It just says on here, oh, it does say approval. Okay. All right. Who would like to move to approve the annual plan?
I move to approve the annual plan for 24-25 school year.
And who would like
I'd like to second.
it? Okay. Director Rogan. All right. So all in favor of approving the annual plan, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. We don't have any objections, so it is now approved. Okay. Oh, man. And my computer wants to restart again. All right. All right. So we're going to go on now to the big budget discussion presentation.
Dr. Aramaki, do you want to say anything before I begin?
The only thing I want to say is I was wondering if someone could call Jack and see if he can turn down the temperature. It is so hot in here. So, okay. Okay.
I believe
I was like, if Jack is still here, that guy knows how to get it done.
Is this not
But
working?
it is really hot. So, I mean,
I don't know.
I think Corey Green can get it handled, but
Okay.
okay, great.
since
thanks.
he's got access
The
to
only comment that I have for you. Otherwise, I'd like to turn it over to our
Thank
Deputy
you.
Superintendent, Davida.
Budget cuts. I'm joking. Good evening, board. For the record, my name is Melissa DeVita, and I'm the Deputy Superintendent of Finance and Operations for the Bellevue School District. I am grateful for the opportunity to present this budget to you, but before we start, I just want to take the opportunity to thank my team that has been working on this since January. Jason Golick, Ms. Megan Hayden, and then all the budget analysts that work for them. And I'd also like to acknowledge that as we develop our budgets, students continue to be at the center of all of our discussions. And they're considered when we're making all of our spending decisions and when we put the budget together for the district. So I'm going to talk about a lot of numbers today, but I want you to know that as we're talking about these numbers, that students were always at the center of those decisions. Next slide. The primary focus of tonight's discussion will be the 24-25 budget. However, before we get there, I'd like to just take a few minutes to provide a basic overview of school funding and school budgeting in the state of Washington. And then I'd like to give you a quick update on where we are with the 22-23 financial status. Next slide. So before we talk about details, I just wanted to give a quick overview of how funding works in the state of Washington and how we can use those funds. We basically have three different buckets of money. The general fund, which is what we use for our day-to-day operations, our capital and tech fund, which we use for building maintenance and technology expenditures, and then our buildings fund, which is really for new buildings and large additions. Our general fund is what we use for our day-to-day operations, for salaries, for materials, for curriculum, benefits for employees. This is the fund where we do have budget constraints, and we can't move money from other funds in order to cover salaries and other things. Our capital and tech fund is funded primarily by our capital and tech levy, which is our local taxes, and we can use some of that money to reimburse the general fund for very specific expenditures that are approved by state law, but state law does limit how we can use those funds. And then lastly, our buildings fund, and that is really funded by the sale of capital bonds. Our most recent bond election was in 2020, and we have been selling bonds periodically to support the construction of Newport High School and the transition center and some work at Interlake High School. Next slide. So there are some basic things that we should know about school budgeting as we move into this. First, the fact is that we do need to balance our budget. While we do have some savings that are generally called fund balance or reserved, these are used when there are unforeseen circumstances that arise, such as lower than anticipated enrollment, resulting in lower than planned revenue. But overall, we do need to balance our budget. And we recognize that people in our community do pay high taxes, but a lot of these taxes basically go to the state and then come back to us. Or there's other entities that receive property taxes like the county, the city of Bellevue, King County Libraries. So not all of your property taxes necessarily come to the school district. With respect to our local levies, these local levies are really important to us, and we use them basically for our education programs and operations, as well as our capital and tech. We are limited on how much we can collect in our local levies, especially for operations, by state law based upon our enrollment. In the capital and tech area, we are limited on what we can spend that money for. We also need to renew these levies every 4 years if we want to continue to collect these taxes. And the next time that we need to hold an election is in February of 2026. I also want to acknowledge the donations that we receive from the Bellevue Schools Foundation and PTSA and how important those are to us, especially as we look at innovation and enrichment opportunities for our students. And lastly, with respect to class size is determined by how much staff we put at a school, not necessarily the size of the school. And we have not changed our staffing models since before the pandemic. So even though in some instances a parent may feel like their staff is larger this year than it was last year, that could be dependent upon how enrollment shifts rather than us changing the way that we are staffing schools. We are not enlarging class sizes as part of this budget. Okay, next slide. So I just wanted to provide you with a quick overview of where we stand coming out of the 2023-2024 school year. Next slide. I've been providing updates to the board throughout the year, starting in December, again in April, and now again in August. This has been a tough year for us, and we've had more surprises than we generally have over the course of this year. At the start of the year, we had a lower than we thought originally beginning fund balance at 17.7 million. In addition, though, we also saw a rise in enrollment that was unexpected. So that did help us in terms of having higher than we anticipated revenues coming in. In April, though, while enrollment remained high, transportation ridership was down, which resulted in a pretty significant hit to our income, along with us not reaching a 17-to-1 staffing ratio for K through 12. We are at 17.7 to 1, which basically means that we did not get as much funds as we thought we would in terms of the number of staff for the students that we had. Special education had been overrun by about $5 million, which was also hitting our budget along with MSOCs. And so at that time, we implemented some reductions in spending totaling around $10 million. So we fast forward to August 1st, special education has continued to overrun their budget. They're now exceeding their budget by over $7 million. In addition to that, in the 23-24 budget, we understated expenditures for substitutes, optional professional development for educators, stipends for classified staff, and some certificated salaries, which was a pretty significant hit to our overall budget. We've now incorporated those items into our 24-25 budget, but in order to counteract for that, we were able to leverage some of the capital and tech funds that we had collected doing an interest transfer, which will help us maintain our fund balance at $17.6 million. Next slide. All right, now it's time to look forward, which I'm excited about what we've been able to do with our budget. The first step in our budget process, next slide, is really working with the board to understand their parameters for where they want us to go with this budget. This is part of the governance role of the board, and we did that in January of 2024. These included things like the reductions, prioritizing our students and their educational experience, and keeping the cuts as far away from the classrooms as we could. It also meant focusing on our strategic priorities and moving funds to those areas while we reduced spending and from some other areas. We also wanted to make sure that we continued to focus on the equity and providing opportunities to close the gaps that we see for some of our underserved students. In addition, we want to look for efficiencies and not cut programs across the board. And we wanted to make sure that we continue to pursue opportunities to increase revenue through either donations or retraining and attracting additional students to the programs at VSD. And finally, the board wanted us to make sure that we focused on our long-term stability. And this meant not only doing one-time cuts, but looking for things that would improve our structural spending so that this was an ongoing improvement in our expenditures to support the future of the district. Next slide. As you know, budgets are really a series of assumptions that we use to help us figure out what we believe our revenue will be, as well as what we think our expenses will be in any given time frame. So in the area of school district budgets, some of the really key items that we need to consider are enrollment, as well as staffing, what levels of staff we will have, what the cost of that staff will be. From an enrollment perspective, we estimated that we would have 18,450 students from a revenue perspective, as opposed to 18,750 students from an expenditure perspective. And the reason why we use two different numbers is because it gives us room in case the number of students we have come in do not reach that 18,750. We will not have to make significant changes in staffing or other things because we have that 300 student barrier. If we receive more students than 18,450, that's additional funds that we can use for other things because we've already built in staffing for that larger number. That 300 student buffer is equivalent to about $3.3 million in revenue. As I stated earlier, we made 0 adjustments to our staffing formulas, and so this year we plan to have 796 certificated staff members within our buildings. Also, from a contractual perspective, we are able to include all of the salary increases that are included in all of our contracts for all of our employee groups. The average certificated educator costs the district about $157,000. I want to make sure that people know that that is not just their salary, that it includes benefits, it also includes retirement, and it also includes what the district must pay on their behalf in terms of payroll taxes. We are looking at staffing, and we hope that we reach the right numbers. However, we always build in some contingency staff in case enrollment comes in higher or in case it comes in differently. So if some schools exceed forecasts while other schools are not quite there, sometimes it's difficult to move teachers between buildings. And so we like to have a pool of staff that we can add as needed based upon the enrollment at the individual schools or even the demographics of the students at those schools. Sometimes they will need extra support. So that we have 10 extra general education educators in the budget, along with 5 contingency special education staff members. That 15 additional staff members is equivalent to $2.3 million. And so if you look at the overall picture, we have $3.3 million in contingency on the revenue side and $2.3 million contingency on the expenditure side for a total of $5.6 million that we can use depending upon what enrollment comes in at and the staffing for that. Lastly, we are in a new era where it comes from non-resident students. Last year, we got a significant number of non-resident students. We didn't want to bet on getting more, so we assumed that they would be flat going into this school year. But we fortunately have seen an increase in that, and I'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide. So next slide, please. So this does give you a picture of enrollment and what we anticipate it to be. So the 18,450 students is 391 students lower than what we had at the end of June of this year in actual enrollment. And the real reason for that reduction is because our 12th grade cohort that graduated is larger than what we have been seeing and expect in kindergarten. And so year over year, you'll see larger cohorts graduating and smaller cohorts coming into the district. So that is what is primarily driving that reduction. But there are some good things happening. First of all, our kindergarten numbers are right on track to hit the 1,200 students. That is the kindergartners that have already enrolled. As of July 29th, we have over 1,000 kindergartners already enrolled. We have 100. We're at like 116 less than the forecast of 1,200. And so we expect to see those kids enrolling in August if we continue to follow what we've seen historically in terms of how enrollments happen over the course of the summer. So that's great news. We also currently have 141 more students that have open enrolled in Bellevue School District schools coming in from other districts. 347 of our non-resident students are children of employees or staff members, and the total number of non-resident students enrolled in the school district for the 24-25 school year is 1,152. So that's a nice number of additional students that we have coming from other places. You'll also notice that we do expect enrollment to continue to decline, and again, that is because of the size of cohorts. So next slide, please. So you can see here when you're looking at enrollment by grade level, the numbers, this is from the end of the year in 2023-2024. So this is from June. And you can see how the average size of the cohorts are larger at high schools at 1,686 versus 1,295 is the average at the elementary level. The high school numbers for 11th and 12th grade do not include 333 students that were full-time and running start. And so if you add those students in and recalculate that average, it actually jumps up to 1,769 students. So the variation there is almost 500 students between the cohorts, the average size of cohorts in elementary and the average size of cohorts in our high schools. And that is largely due to the reduction in birth rates that is across the entire country. If you follow the news, you hear about it not only in our country, but even globally. And so we're continuing to monitor that, but that is driving lower enrollment as we move forward. And that's why we anticipate enrollment continuing to drop as we move into the future. Next slide, please. I wanted to remind everybody that we did do previous budget reductions. Coming into the 2023-2024 school year, we consolidated 2 elementary schools. We replaced some of our outside contracted staff with district employees. We reduced district employees as well. And we reduced what we were spending on material, supplies, and operating costs. And we matched our school staff to our enrollment. All of these reductions are still in place. So these were not one-time reductions. These are savings that we're seeing year over year over year. If we didn't make these reductions last year, we would be reducing by $35 million going into the 24-25 school year. The reductions we're making this year are the same. They're going to continue to roll into future years as well. We don't have a lot of one-time spending that we can reduce. Sometimes if we do have one-time spending, we'll realign it to other initiatives or projects. So we do have about $400,000 right now in the budget to start implementing some of the strategic initiatives. And some of the strategic initiatives are going to be implemented by switching of what staff is currently doing. So you're not going to see a savings there, but you're going to see staff doing different work in support of those initiatives. So there's some additional money to invest, and then there's going to be some people taking on different roles than they've had historically. Next slide. So this is an overview of our budget. It's a summary of our budget, and it starts on the far right with the 23-24 budget. If you recall, in the March timeframe, we did a budget extension, increasing the amount that we were spending based upon some of the factors that we were seeing, including the higher spending levels within special education. And then this is the 2024-25 budget. And so even though the budget has grown, we also had to reduce spending. And the reason why is it's grown because of inflation factors, right? So if you went and took inflation out of it, then you would see what we would have to be reducing in addition to that. So we had to put in the increases in salaries for people. And so we can't afford the same number of resources that we had because the cost of those resources is greater. We are anticipating starting this school year with $17.6 million. It is lower than we would like to have, and it is lower than the board guidelines on our fund reserves and balances. However, we do plan, we've reduced enough so that we can start building back that fund balance. So we anticipate ending the year with 4.7%, not quite to that 5, but there is the contingencies and other things in our budget that could help raise that even further. Our goal is to continue to build that back to reach that 5%. The other thing I want to point out is if you look at the lower chart, you can see the percentage of our total expenditures that we spent on school-based staff, other staff, and material supplies and operating costs. One of the directives from the board was to try and keep as much as of our reductions away from our school buildings and our classrooms. And if you look at the way that the expenditures are occurring this year, you can see that the percentage that is in school-based staff has grown, while the percentage in other staff, which is operational staff, staff in the home office and not located at schools, has dropped pretty significantly. And that was in an effort to keep these reductions away from our schools. But I would also like to say, as we move forward, doing that will get harder and harder because there are some things we just have to do. We have to have a payroll department. We have to have a finance department and those types of things. And so as we look forward, we'll continue to look for efficiencies and way to do things better and cleaner. But we're going to have some pretty tough decisions that we're going to have to make as we move forward. And I'll talk about what our 4-year outlook is in a few slides. One of the issues, next slide, please. One of the issues that is causing this is the structural funding issues at the state and the way that they fund K-12 education. And so we are not the only district that are facing these financial challenges. Every district around us is facing them as well. And it's really twofold. The first is enrollment dropping is an issue, right? Because a lot of our funding comes based upon enrollment. But the second side of it is our per pupil funding has been dropping since 2018-19 once it's adjusted for inflation. And so basically we are getting funded $700 less per student between 2018-19 and 2023-24. That equates to $12 million annually right now, and it will continue to drop because of the way that the state funds K-12 education. So even if a school district enrollment stayed flat, and even if we just gave staff members the raises based upon the inflation factor from the state, we would still be facing a deficit year over year because of the per pupil funding dropping while we have to raise raises and give raises and other things. So this is basically the structural funding issue that we are challenged with from the state, and every school district in the state is facing the same thing. And that's why unless the state makes changes to the way that they're funding us, we will continue to have to reduce our spending on an ongoing basis. Next slide. So this is these are the areas that we cut in the 24-25 budget, and these are the reductions that were made. This is the same slide that you saw in April, on April 18th, 2024. I know that this is an eye chart for people. It is available. This presentation will be available on our website. It is also available in board docs under the agenda for this meeting. I know that I just went through a summary of our budget. There is a full budget report that is 274 pages long, provides a lot of detail. That also is available on the board docs so that if people want to dig in and look deeper, they are more than welcome to do that. It will also be available on our website. And it's also available on OSPI because that is what we give the state in terms of our budget. It includes all of the assumptions we made around enrollment, not only total enrollment, but enrollment by various demographic groups as well, because we do get some additional funding, for example, for students with special needs or students experiencing poverty. So all of those assumptions are in there, and people are welcome to dig in and look at, you know, how much is going to salaries and benefits versus other things, and what all of our funding sources are from the state. Next slide. I'm proud of the fact that we can continue to keep students at the focus as we make these budget decisions. And so we were able to continue to do a lot of things that our kids really need. We maintained the mental health supports for students and staff. We are supporting the adoption of our new literacy curriculum for our elementary students, which we heard quite a bit about before the end of the school year, and how exciting that is for many of our families. We were able to maintain class sizes at the status quo, so we're not raising class sizes. We're implementing the new Welcome Center that I've heard a lot of you talk about and are excited about that. We're investing in multilingual opportunities for our students. We're introducing Korean at both the elementary and the middle school level for students. And we're supporting the development of the human-centered systems, investing in reimagining middle schools, and investing in our sustainability plan, which again is one of those priorities for our district. So being able to do all these things while we're reducing our budget in other areas makes me proud of some of the decisions that we're making in terms of putting priorities first. Next slide. With every budget comes risks because we do make assumptions, and so actuals are never what our budget is. Despite our best efforts to make the best assumptions that we can, they are just not. And so some of our greatest risks are actual enrollment coming in lower than we had forecasted because it drives so much of our revenue. It drives both the revenue we receive from the state as well as our local educational program and operations levy revenue. And so if that comes in lower, that will hit us. Transportation ridership, we anticipate it coming back. We have enough bus drivers on hand not to have to cancel routes. We're continuing to hire. We have added 6 bus drivers over the summer, and we're going to just continue to hire year round. Special education and the needs of students with special needs is growing. We're concerned that we didn't increase that budget enough, even though we increased it pretty significantly. So we just want to make sure that we continue to monitor that closely. And I'm concerned that the actual ending fund balance from 23-24 will be lower than we estimated. I don't know that, but we've had surprises throughout this year. And we've got 2 more years of actual, or 2 more months, sorry, of actual that we're looking at as we finish up this year. So there's things that we're concerned about and we're keep monitoring as we not only complete this year, but then get into next year. Next slide. We're also improving our financial practices and implementing some other mitigation strategies. So these are all the things that we are going to be using to help control our actual spending and to make sure that the budget owners themselves are making decisions to remain within their budget, basically, their spending limits. So first of all, we're implementing position control and spending control, which basically says that you cannot hire and you cannot put in a purchase order for more than what you have budgeted. The system will reject it. At that point, then we're going to have discussions if that is really a person's need. We're also going to be conducting a budget review of special education just to look at our service practices and what we're spending and look for areas to improve not only our supportive students, but also to control our spending. We are proactively partnering with our business owners and budget owners. We're asking our budget analysts to take on some new roles, working directly with them to ensure that people understand what is in their budget versus what they've actually spent, and to support them in decision making. Every leader in this district, things are going to happen that weren't planned on. And there will be circumstances where people will say, I need more. The bottom line is that we're all going to have to make some tough decisions and prioritize things and look at switching spending, and that it's going to happen throughout the district. So our finance people can provide people with information and support them, but the decisions need to be made at the schools and in the departments throughout the year to ensure that we stay within budget. And then lastly, we're looking forward to improving our reporting to the board, making it more visual, so that you can see how we're doing on a monthly basis. Next slide. As I said before, we will have to continue to find funds over the next 4 years or 3 years because of the structural funding issues at the state. This was built assuming that for each grade as it moves up, we're keeping 100% of those students, but which means though that enrollment will be dropping just because we're graduating larger classes than we have coming in. But also then the state funding is a problem for us, as we talked about earlier. So next year we anticipate having to find $10.8 million if we're going to maintain the 5% minimum fund balance. The following year, $14.9 million, and then after that, $22.3 million. That adds up to $48 million over 3 years. That is going to be difficult, which is why we need to work with our state and continue to advocate and work with the other districts on the same types of things, right? Because I think numbers have more power. And so working with our other neighboring districts and superintendents will help us move in that direction. MSOCS is one of those areas that we are underfunded in. Next slide, please. MSOCS, material supplies and operating costs, is one of the areas that we are underfunded in. We are required to show this slide at every year. We did get a bump in funding last year, but it is one of the areas that we are continuing to advocate for additional funding with. And then finally, I just want to very quickly, next slide, look at our capital budgets. This area, next slide. So this is our capital and tech levy. Basically, we're going to have a total funds available of $110 million. We anticipate spending $66.8 million, which will leave us with an end of year balance of $43.9 million. So we are fine in our capital and tech levy area. We continue to try and leverage these funds as much as the law allows us to better support our general fund and the issues that we have with our general fund. And then lastly, one more slide. This is our capital building fund. We are planning on selling $100 million in bonds in this coming year to support the completion of Newport High School, a little bit of completion of transition, which is to open this fall, the new transition site, which is to open this fall, but then support the new big picture location and the building of that, as well as looking at international school and working on educational specs and other things for the international school to move that forward. Next slide. So while we're not even started with 24-25, one more slide, please. We are starting the process of preparing for 25-26 already. We have negotiations with our largest employee group, which is the Bellevue Education Association, as well as bus drivers and warehouse employees. So we're going to have to build that into 25-26. We'll continue to advocate for structural changes with our funding in the state of Washington. We want to implement priority budgeting, and so that we're going to be focusing on our future needs as opposed to our past spending. And it's just a different way for us to look at how we spend our money and the decisions that we're making. And we want to improve engagement in the budgeting process with not only our employees, but also our community at large. Next slide. In the short term, we are putting out public notices. We will have a budget hearing at 3:45 p.m. on August 15th, just prior to the board meeting. And then we will ask you to approve this budget at that board meeting. And with that, lastly, I'm open for questions, but prior to that, I want you to know that in the appendix to this presentation are the questions and answers to those questions that you asked on Monday. So that is also available to the public to review in terms of what some of those discussions have already been. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So who would like to go first in the discussion here? Okay, Director Rogan.
First and foremost, I'd just like to say thank you for the hard work that you put into this presentation, and oh my goodness, 250 some page report for the state. Wow, thank you for that. It's celebratory and it's staggering, you know, sobering really at the same time, isn't it? It's I appreciate in terms of the celebration that we're holding on fast to our values of students at the center. That came through really clear, and it's heartening to see that, and to see that there's tangible things that we're trying to hold on tight to. The 4-year outlook is just, it's a bit of a freak out. And, you know, I hope if nothing else, if the public is engaged with this, we can mobilize and really engage our legislature to do something different, because this impacts everybody in the state. It's just, it feels so unjust in so many ways. You've answered so many questions. I really don't want to, you know, bang on this too much, Melissa, but I guess the only question I had was regarding the non-resident enrollment. We had a bump, you said, this year, but yet we're assuming that it's going to be flat for non-resident student enrollment this year. I'm just kind of curious about why that assumption. I know there's risks and assumptions with budget, but specifically, that just was one that I was curious about.
Do you want me to just take these down, or do you want me to answer them?
Okay, so then, yeah, sure.
So we assume that coming into this year, because we do our enrollment assumptions back in February, March timeframe. We had such a big increase coming into 23-24 that we didn't know if that people would continue to come, or had we hit the top, and would so we just assumed that we would stay, right? So the fact that we've got 141 more non-resident students coming into the district was kind of a surprise this year, because this is new territory for us, right? So we're going to continue to monitor it and hopefully we'll get better at making some of these assumptions, but we didn't want to overestimate it. We're better underestimating versus over.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, my apologies to Director Block, whose hand I've been having trouble seeing. I see there's a little yellow speck up there, so I could try harder to notice it. Would you like to have your turn?
Sure, thank you. So I appreciate the chance to one, participate in this remotely. Ms. DeVita, it was really great to see your presentation. Thanks for the additions you made to it. I firmly believe that we'll only be able to attract and retain students as long as we keep BSD as a center of excellence, and that we are creating and providing a high quality education for those students. So I really appreciate the focus on continuing to keep those students receiving all the support that we can provide for them. As I understand your presentation and some of the materials we've gotten before, there are two larger driver, or there's kind of some structural deficits that are coming to the fore. We had some budget items that were sort of missed from this last year, which I understand is corrected for the year going forward. And then special education funding has been extremely difficult to project and has been growing much faster than other costs in the district, is my understanding. And I really look forward to improving the predictability of that, making sure that we're supporting those students and families as appropriate, but also making sure that we understand what those costs are before each school year starts, so that we can best account for them. I think it's important for us to also understand and anticipate where our school district is going to start to strain in response to these cuts, and identifying the best ways to support that. Right now, as I see it, our initial largest cuts have been towards the elementary schools and central office staff, and understanding how those may be straining the system, what we can do to alleviate that. I know there's still some unequal distribution of some of the enrollment at the elementary level, with I know Somerset's going a little bit high on its enrollment, and what we can do to make sure that we're supporting all of those. I found what I believe is your slide 13 or page 13, in looking at the inflation adjusted numbers, pretty sobering. Just to put your numbers in another context, since 2018-19, the state funding on a per pupil basis has decreased by 6% when you adjust for inflation. And so that is hurting all of the districts. And quite frankly, I think some of the districts are hoping and waiting for some sort of dramatic intervention to fix that. We don't have that luxury. We have to budget on a year-by-year basis. And I hope that we'll be able to do a great job with that. But we are not looking at getting more money from the state. We're looking at actually, while the absolute dollars may look like they're increasing, when you adjust for inflation, it's decreasing at this point in time. I have a couple other things. One is you mentioned sort of some of the staff and kind of what I'll refer to as the last ones in, or the ones who are going to support where we need it. And I just want to recognize that staff that are split between schools are often challenged due to the transportation between the schools and the difficulties fully integrating in the school culture when they're at multiple schools, because they're going to be split between multiple places, and that's going to be a real challenge. Another thing I want to end on two positive notes here. One is transportation. My understanding is that we now have a fully staffed transportation department. We expect that the bus routes that we advertised at the beginning of the year will be fully offered. And we look forward to welcoming back students to all of those routes. And that we are really excited to have that. That program is both a cost recovery program and a wonderful service to a lot of families that end up relying on it. My family used the Bellevue School Transportation for several years. And school buses are really the best solution for elementary and most middle school students. And we really look forward to getting those students back on those buses and making sure that that's the safest, most efficient way for them to get to school, and also best for the funding of the district. And then finally, just how can families help? We're in a little bit of a period of stress here for the district, and we want to make sure that families do recognize that we have, the Bellevue Schools Foundation is a wonderful way to support our schools and our families, as well as the PTSAs at each school. And those are great ways for families to contribute when they're able to help support and make sure the programs that they care about most are fully supported and funded. Thank you.
Since this is complicated and we're trying a new approach, I'll give you a chance if you want to react to anything, or you can wait till the end.
I would just say thank you for the input. I agree that elementaries in central office have been the most impacted by cuts to date, but it's going to start spreading across the entire district. Part of that is because elementaries have had the greatest enrollment loss, but it will start impacting others. And so the other way that families can help is by advocating with us to our legislatures and supporting that over the course of the next year. So thank you.
Okay, who's next? Are there any hands raised that I don't see? All right, Director Ars.
Would you mind, George, going to slide, I think it was number 15, which is the celebrations of innovations, things that we're working on. It's the one before risks.
Yeah, slide 16. Slide 16.
16? Okay, sorry. I just want to start with a positive, and because I think when you're looking at budget deficits, which is something we can't avoid, but at the same time, we have to try to live up to our motto and our mission and vision. It's hard, but I appreciate the fact that we have so much on that list that really kind of drives at what our community asks. And I want to celebrate those things and just give it a little more air on it. But I think part of that success is also because we have an amazing community support through BSF, Jubilee Reach, Rainy Athletes, and so on. We have these programs which allows our students to continue to explore and experience things that we really want them to have. No,
Excuse me one second. Next slide, George.
Yeah, next one.
Sorry.
Nope.
No, other way. There you go. Perfect.
Yes. And I think it's important that as Director Rogan had mentioned, it's sobering. Talking about budget is very sobering, especially when we have to cut so much. But I just want to keep that up there as I talk because that's happy news. And I just want to, during all of this, I also want to make sure that we recognize that we do have amazing partnership that other districts do not have. We have, though volunteerism is down, we still have people who are stepping up and supporting our students through mentorship, through activities, through various different ways to, I'm blanking on our community partnership who donated funding this last meeting. LifeSpring, yes, thank you, to cover the cost difference for student meals that was spent last year. And so that said, and moving forward, we're going to have that while other school districts, 250 school districts are not. They're in the same position as we are. And part of that is, as you mentioned, is that it is the way a funding model is. And I know that there are two components that we have overspent or missed, special ed being one of them. And I think I have asked you on Monday regarding special education and its costs. I noticed that there's some additional information that was shared, but I wonder, I would like for you to actually talk about that a bit so that we have it on record of, because I think though we spend more, it's not because we're going crazy spending ed, but it's based upon need. I think people don't understand is that people come to Bellevue not just for high academics, but all the other services that we provide, including special ed. And it's recognized. People move here just for that. And that's not predictable as far as who and what service or how much service that each child requires. I agree with Director Block that we need to somehow figure out more predictability if possible. But with a high accolade of a district that we have comes everything, including that. And so if you could explain some aspects of why the cost is greater than anticipated, that would be great. The other thing I would love for you to talk about is our numbers on McKinney-Ventos increase in its impact and the additional cost to us because of that, which is not funded by the state.
With respect to special ed, yes, we do have people that move here because of the services that we're able to offer to families. And historically, because of our higher levy dollars and things, we could do that. It becomes more of a struggle for us because now we're limited in terms of how many local levy dollars that we can collect versus what the state is funding. And the state really only funds about 50% of the cost of serving our students with special needs. We don't know the full needs of all the students prior to the school year, and we're not funded based upon the needs of the students. We're really funded by these additional factors, right? So needs don't really enter into the funding model from the state in terms of special needs of students, like the severity of the needs of the students and the cost to serve those. That being said, I do think that there's things that we could learn from others to help us in terms of how we are servicing our students and what the cost of those various things are, which is why we're going to do the review that we're doing this year to basically say, okay, let's look at what we're doing versus others. I also think that we can do a better job of submitting for some safety net funding to backfill the cost of serving students with the greatest needs. And so we're looking at improving that process to get us some additional revenue to further support students with special needs. So there's some things that we can do different and better, but there's some things that we just don't know at the start of the school year. And so we need to get better at working with our special needs department to kind of figure out some of those things early on.
Can I just add to that, just around special education? I think there's an article that came out in the Seattle Times recently, but we know that post-COVID also the needs of students are greater. I mean, a lot of kids who would have been identified with special needs didn't get identified during COVID, and then coming out of COVID, we know that there's an increase in students with needs. I think that the severity of the needs are greater, and so I think that's part of what's impacting us. The other thing I'll just mention is I'm working with a group of superintendents to kind of look at like how we can advocate together around legislative, increasing legislative funding. One of the things that a professor at the University of Washington talked about was we need to look at student needs. This is kind of what I think you're saying, Director Aras, and not focus too much on the gap between what we spend and what we get from the state, because it doesn't always tell the accurate story. Because in Bellevue, we will fund the needs of kids. And so we have a huge gap between what we get from the state and what we fund, what we get from the state and what we pay for our kids. But some districts, the gap is quite small, but that's because they literally do not have the money to pay for what students need. And so they're giving what they have, but it's not necessarily what the students need. And so when we look at in the future, the funding for special education, some of it is we really got to look at the needs of the kids and then what would it cost to take care of those kids. And then and then do some advocacy around what we get from the state. So it's kind of multifaceted, but it doesn't surprise me that special education funding is growing and growing and growing. But I do agree with the board directors about not being able to predict what we're going to spend or accurately budget for it is a huge challenge for us, and something that we need to do in order to be able to sustain kind of our global funding picture.
If you don't mind, if I could add a piece to that, one of the things that it's important for everyone to understand is that when a student transfers into the district with an IEP, the district is obligated to offer that student comparable services, meaning we have to continue to provide the same or very similar services to wherever they're coming from, which could be another state or another district. And we don't know when a student is going to move into our district who's already in a residential educational placement or a high cost placement. We've had a disproportionate number of those things happen in the last couple of years. And also, Deputy Superintendent DeVita has been very kind in understanding that sometimes the law changes at a rapid pace. For example, in the third week of May, the Ninth Circuit issued a decision that now mandates that Washington provide special education services to students through the age of 22. Obviously, that was not included in the last state budget. That's something the district is going to have to comply with as a matter of law, even though there's no funding allocated for that. And with respect to this district, it's going to be impacting about 20 additional students staying a year longer than we planned when they budgeted. So just as a legal reminder, one of the very challenging things with respect to budgeting for special education is you never know what's going to come down the pike, including when there's going to be a huge legal change, like having to have an additional 20 students that we didn't anticipate continuing to serve on less than a month's notice. Thank you, Sally Sue, for being flexible and adjusting with that.
Thanks, Shanna. I'm glad you brought the legal part, because I think one of the things we forget to mention is that special education has a lot of laws that drives the costs, and we have to abide by it, especially when we identify it. And so it's not that we can't ignore. It is something we have to once we know. And I think because we have good conscience, and we are willing to, and we step up and do it. It's still not where we would like to be per Bellevue desires, but it is definitely something I appreciate, but want to make sure we highlight that. The other thing is, can you talk about the cost to us regarding McKinney-Vento, the numbers and the growth and additional costs? Because some of these things, I think the public needs to understand that we have to absorb because of the state laws and the way the funding is modeled.
So with McKinney-Vento, our McKinney-Vento numbers last year grew to over 700 students, and they are continuing to grow. We expect them to continue to grow coming into this school year. For McKinney-Vento, first of all, the students have a number of needs that we need to satisfy at the building levels, and at times that requires us to add staffing at our buildings and other things. But one of the biggest areas where we see cost is in the transportation. So if a student went to school in Bellevue, if they're homeless in another community, let's say they're in Seattle, North Shore, wherever, we have a responsibility with that district to transport that student back to the school that they were at, to provide some stability for that student. So it's absolutely the right thing to do, but the state does not fund that at all. And so many times, because of the various locations of the students, we can't use buses or any of that kind of stuff. It's basically independent transportation services, which is the highest cost of any transportation service. But, we could have two students in North Shore who live 5 miles apart that we will transport them independently. And so we pay for half of that. The other district pays for half of that. So we not only pay for the students half of the transportation costs for the students coming to us, but we also pay for half of the transportation costs for students that are homeless in our district that went to school elsewhere. And so that adds up to very significant dollars. I think it's close to $900,000 last year. So it is a significant impact to us where there is absolutely no funding for that.
Okay, let's hear from Director Webster.
Thank you, Ms. DeVita, not only for the presentation today, but to you and your team for identifying additional opportunities to help us close this gap. I mean, we've got some challenges and some decisions that we're going to have to make in the near future here. And as we all talked about, the predictability is going to be really important. And I know that we're all moving toward that, even as you speak about the safety net funding, so thank you so much. I think like you, with regard to the safety net funding, I am curious to understand the gap as it relates to what other districts are spending per student with special needs, to see if there are any additional missed opportunities that we can glean from there. So thank you for adding that information to the slide. The only other question that I had that wasn't answered was around digital discovery. It looks like we had a pretty nice increase in that population or in that enrollment. And I'm wondering if those are students who were previously already enrolled in our district, or if there are new students coming to our district, and then also what the demographic makeup of those students are.
So I don't have the demographic makeup of those students. However, they're a mix. So we have been approved by the state to offer online learning services and opportunities to students no matter where in the state that they live. So part of our non-resident enrollment growth is digital discovery students. The funding for those students, for the younger students, it is the same as the funding for somebody who's coming in person, because we have such a high number of hours of synchronized learning where they're working directly with a teacher. And so we get regular funding just like a child who is coming in person. For our secondary students who do not have that same level of synchronized learning, we basically get the average funding for a high school student in the state. So it's a little bit less than the funding that we get for our students, but it's within 90 to 92%. So it's a pretty high number. And so it is a mixture of students where they're coming from. The non-resident students are growing faster than the in-district students because of the caliber of education that Bellevue offers, as well as the support structures that we have around digital discovery. We have counselors, we offer, we just offer a lot more supports than some of the other online learning opportunities do. And so people are definitely interested. We even have a PTSA for digital discovery.
First
Yeah,
in the
and
state.
it's the first in the state. So there's a lot of things that we're doing that make it more welcoming and more supportive of families and students.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, like, if there are any plans to sort of communicate with our public the opportunity that we have here with the digital discovery, and then also wondering how we're going to fold that into the Welcome Center, right, as sort of an opportunity that families may want to explore. So, thank you.
Okay, so I guess it's my turn finally. First of all, I just want to recognize what a big issue this is that we're working through. 48 million eventually. It's huge. I was going to say I like this supplemental document, but it's like no good act goes unpunished because I have more questions. So let me just go through a few of them. I wonder if you have any instinct about the reason why, like, we charge. I didn't understand anything about safety net funding, actually. Let's just say, so now I understand a little bit. But like, there's a bunch of different reasons. Like, we could have had a bunch of kids with lower needs or something. So like, it was a lot of kids, so it added up to 76 million, but we only charged 6.8. Or there could be, I'm just hypothetical. There could be a lot of reasons why we didn't charge it. So I'm glad you're looking into it. Do you have any instinct about how that might happen?
I don't. So I don't know a lot about safety net funding. Then let our general counsel. I don't know a lot about safety net. I know that donut of 16,000 and kids that fall in
that
the
seems
16
like something we could advocate for that not to be that way.
Yes,
Um,
that would be fantastic. One of the challenges associated with safety net funding comes back to that thing I just talked about, the kids who come in from other districts. In order to get safety net funding, you have to comply with a very specific set of things in each IEP that go beyond what is legally required for compliance purposes, and things have to be phrased in very particular ways. And so when we get a student who is requires a lot of services from another, particularly from another state, we often get IEPs that would not get safety net approval because they weren't written with that in mind. So that is a conversation that I know that the special education staff are planning to circle back around on in order to make sure that we have a process for catching those as quickly as possible. And also, when we have students who are subject to stay put, which is they stay under their existing IEP because of a pending dispute, oftentimes their IEPs expire while the dispute is ongoing, and we can't submit those for safety net. And again, often they are our most expensive students, including our students who are in residential educational placements or non-public agency placements, where we're not able to submit the IEP because we're legally required to continue under the now expired IEP. But
we have more of
obviously, if
these?
anybody wants to talk with me more about it in a different day, different place, happy to do so, because I could go on forever, and I'm getting the face from Dr. Aramaki that he would like me not to go on forever, but happy to talk more about it with anybody at any time.
Okay, wow, well, that was enlightening, and somehow we have more of that kind of situation than Lake Washington does, I guess, somehow. I don't know. So let me just say thank you for the thing on digital discovery, because I was worried, because remember when way back we were talking about how it'd be alternate learning and it wouldn't be funded properly, and somehow that's worked out. Yeah.
It's all changed with
Okay,
COVID.
good. Oh, good. Okay, so then also, I'm making an assumption here, this 17-1 is some kind of, I want to say penalty from the state if you can't quite hit that, they don't fund you as much?
We assume when we build our revenue that we are going to hit the 17-1, and so then if we don't, then we don't get the funding.
So that's a state thing that they're doing to us.
It is a
Okay.
state thing, and the thing is you have to get as close to 17-1 as possible. So the closer you get, the better it is for funding, but you can't go over or under 17-1. So it's one of those where you got to keep pushing and get as close to 17-1 as possible. So it's not a trigger, you get it or you don't get it, but it's like we try to get as close to 17 as possible.
And then I had a question about the bonds and the investment, the interest on the funds and the funds we didn't spend, because we saw the chart where we were going to do something to Newport, and then there would be some money left over even after we floated those bonds. And I guess I was just worrying about the interest we have to pay on the bond, and then the interest that we might receive on the excess funds, and how does that net out?
We have somebody who does an arbitrage study for us, and we have to spend our bonds within 3 years. So there's a lot of, I'm happy to share that with you at another time, because it's much more complicated.
But we're not getting in some kind of a
no, there's
hole with
we
that.
have arbitrage people who look at
Okay.
things, and yeah.
Good word. You can't argue with arbitrage.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, it's hard for me to say, but I feel like I want to apologize, but it's my role as oversight. And the position control and the purchase orders going above what they should have gone due to a software situation. I mean, wouldn't we have had that where you couldn't overspend your budget like for decades before? I mean, when we were using pencils and green ledgers?
Yeah, so so there's a couple of things that impact that. One of them is that there are salary charges and things that go against MSOCs, which is for like overtime or hours above your scheduled hours, and they hit in arrears. So part of the issue is the timing issue, and people didn't understand that. So part of it is an education of our budget owners. That's why this partnering is really, really important, so that they understand what is being charged where and how much it is in order to do that. So there's some things that we're putting in place to make sure that all the pieces are in place so that people understand it's not just purchase orders that go against MSOX. It's also overtime.
And the staffing thing with the position control.
We did
So it
not
was
have that in our old software.
Right.
So it was all being done by hand.
Yeah.
And the areas where it's the hardest was like paras, for example. So it wasn't really the schools and cert staff so much as it was some of the areas where there's a lot of ins and outs as well.
Okay, so it was too complicated. It wasn't just like put it down on a column on a ledger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that concludes my questions, which seem to be more minute. But do we need a second go round? We're out of time. All right.
Out of curiosity, do we still have staff looking over safety net paperwork? Or
Yes, we have compliance. We have some compliance people.
okay, just I understand we're quite a bit on central office, so
Yeah,
I'm just
Scott Powers is working with our directors of special ed because Jeff Jorgensen has left the district, and so they're looking at what staff is where and what their responsibilities are and restructuring some of that.
okay. Just want to make sure.
Okay. So with that, our next item of, we're not having to do we're doing the vote next time and after the hearing and all of that. So I think we're just set for director discussion. Okay. So, does anybody have things they want to go first on the director discussion? Should I roll my die? I can't think what to say. I mean, I could talk more about my obsession with governance calendars, but wait, no, why don't I I'm going to call on Director Rogan first and we'll just go down.
We love that obsession of yours,
Yeah.
Director Watson. It's been a hot minute since we were here last, right? It just seems like our meetings were so close. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Enitai Elementary. I had a chance to meet with the new principal, Matt Kosteka, and Jay Powell, with a community member. I think I mentioned it at the last meeting, Sharon Pang, who presented a fascinating historical PowerPoint of the history of Enitai Elementary and really the neighborhood, which is my neighborhood. So it was just fascinating to see the amount of work and research that she put into this, and she's presented it from all over, from the Eastside Heritage Society to different PTAs. She's happy to provide it for us if we ever wanted it. But yeah, it was great. It was great to see the two new dudes at Enitai looking very comfortable with each other. They're going to be great at Enitai. That's it for me.
Microphone. Director Webster?
Sure, I only have a couple of things. First one, and I missed this as well, but July is National Black Family Month. I missed it. And so.
Oh, it's not on our chart?
Yeah, I missed it too.
On here, can we get it on the chart? Where'd you go? Okay.
So just wanted to make sure that we add that to our calendar moving forward. And then Rainier Athletes meetings are going to start up again this month. We took a little break and we'll be right back at it this month. So I'm really excited to rejoin Jesse and that team to continue the work that we do in the community. That's all I got.
Okay, let's go on to Director Aris.
Okay, well, I don't have a whole lot on my list because I think we're going to talk about the legislative stuff next. And so I'll hold off for legislative stuff at that point. But I do want to mention, since I listed some of our community partners, a few that I missed, which is Eastside Pathways and YES. And I'm so sorry, LifeSpring, that it took me a few seconds to pull that out of my brain. But I think it's quite the blessing that we have all of these partnerships. Yeah, yes. And with Jubilee Reach organizing the volunteerism to start setting up classrooms for the new school year, to mental health support with YES, the Eastside Pathway, supporting the community from early childhood onwards in a larger community. And I think all the work that we're trying to do around being more connected in all aspects, I think and the people are willing to and do that still in midst of, which I feel like we're still pulling ourselves back to getting into regular rhythm of things, normacy. I don't think we're back to normal yet. And the fact that people are willing to put in that time to do this and still think creatively to see how we could even make Bellevue that much better. I think it's worth shouting out and celebrating, because it is really that little extra that pulls all these people back to our school district. So just want to celebrate that. That's it.
Okay, and next, I don't know if Director Block wants to try to talk to us over his patchy connection.
Sure. Is it still patchy, or am I coming through okay?
Was that it?
No.
Okay.
Obviously,
yeah.
First off, I want to express my appreciation for the ability to remote into this meeting. It's an interesting perspective to see what everybody who logs in remotely gets to see. Appreciate the learning a little bit about how that works and how we can maybe make it a little better for some of these families. I want to echo everybody else. It's exciting to turn the corner into August and to start thinking about the new school year, which will be here in the blink of an eye. I'm not sure my kids are as excited about that, but hopefully they'll get there before the end of the month or beginning of next month. Well, one of them's excited. He's giving me a rough look right now. Especially groups like Jubilee Reach, who are critical to making it sure that we can start in the classrooms they've provided great support for many years. I've been a part of some of their volunteer efforts to set up classrooms and make sure everything's ready before day one of the classes, and that's really amazing. I do want to reflect that I learned that there's been some movement on some of the practice or plans for equitable grading practices in the district. I know there's been a lot of work as a community or a teacher and parent group that worked on looking into equitable grading practices. And I know it's something that's coming up on our board calendar in the next calendar year. But really, if there's any additional updates that Commissioner Aramaki or his staff would like to make about any tweaks or updates that they're anticipating to grading practices for this coming year, I just wanted to give a chance for that. Thanks.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. Yeah, I think I won't talk about the calendar anymore just at the moment, but I will say I do appreciate that the ability to be remote and come in. I've done it myself, but and I appreciate it when you have to travel, but you do feel what the fly on the wall feels like, because you just feel like you're just these little eyes looking down at everybody from anyway. So the other thing is I was sort of saying earlier, I started reading the Shane Tafir book because somebody gave me a homework assignment, right? So you got to read chapter 9, and then if you read chapter 9, actually you really better go back and read the other chapters so there's a lot of vocabulary. She mints a lot of jargon. So then I'm in the middle of a deep dive trying to figure out the philosophical roots of all this and the way it traces through, ethnography and philosophy and into like postmodernism, and I'm pulling out my Foucault, and then we can go into pedagogy of the oppressed. And all right, so maybe that was a little too much, but that's where my brain was. So that's it for me. That's it for me. All right. Well, we are going to take a little break, and then we are going to meet back in our study session starting at 6:50. So we're not actually adjourned. We're just on a break, right? 6:40. 6:40? Yeah. Oh, says 6:50 here.
I know, but we're early.
Okay, all right. So it's not an adjournment, it's a break.
Okay.